Jack Move is one of those games that's nice to play here and there. And I don't mean play it, put it down, come back in a year. I mean one of those games that scratch the itch if you're looking for a smaller chunk of a genre that you've been wanting to play for a while, especially when that genre that you want a smaller chunk of right now tends to go up into about the 70, 80 hour lengths. Sometimes you really just want that 5 to 6 hour experience. A gaming quickie, if you will. I'm so sorry.
Hey, no, stop, just calm down, don't do it.
Jack Move is a turn-based RPG with a sometimes touching and sometimes dark kind of story, but you wouldn't really be able to tell through the very Saturday morning cartoon vibes it emits. At least not until they get to the heavier topics. And I mean all of that in a good way, by the way, because when I booted the game up, the protagonist, Noah, came off as your standard, I'm an overconfident teenager with daddy issues and I want to take down the system type of character. But that first impression didn't give me the impression that the narrative would go to places that it did. So when it did, I sat there and I kind of just thought, oh, they actually did that. I thought this story, okay. It would be easy in hindsight to say, oh, I could have seen that thing coming from a mile away. But the tone of the game up to a certain point in the game suggested otherwise. That's all I'm really saying. The general premise of the game is Noah wants to get her father back from the dastardly organization known as Monomine, who have their own twisted objectives in mind for him. And that's all that I'll say on that note. The story overall is pretty good, but it moves pretty fast. So sometimes it feels like they don't linger on certain story beats or emotions for too long before Noah basically goes, well, can't dwell here, on to the next beat. The game is roughly 9 to 12 hours long, but you can beat it much faster than that if you do a little bit of grinding in combination with messing with the game's encounter settings. So with that, I guess we're going to talk about gameplay. Being a turn-based game heavily inspired by JRPGs, you should know what to expect if you played Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and the like. That said, it's not super deep. In my mind, that's likely because of its relatively short length, at least compared to your standard JRPG today. As Noah, you will have random encounters and boss fights to deal with using various hacker-themed abilities. Hack is just a standard punch attack. Execute is where your list of spells, software abilities, are. Jack Move is a limit break, and the rest you could probably guess based on context. Now, let me tell you something about Jack Move, the game, not the limit break ability, really quick. It is very, and I mean very, easy to get over-leveled to the point where the rest of the game becomes trivial up until the final boss. This is what ended up happening to me when I played through it. I noticed that there was an enemy type that had the ability to spawn other enemies as backup. Then I thought, I wonder if killing those summoned enemies actually counts toward my XP and money after the fight is said and done. And if you haven't guessed by now, they did. So, with a grin on my face, I knew I was going to abuse the heck out of that, and abuse I did. Couple that with the game allowing the player to tweak encounter rate for random encounters live on the map, and I had the perfect recipe for disaster and a calm walk with no encounters on to the end of the game. The latter I didn't do until the final area just to get a feel for how strong the enemies would be on the way. By the time I got to the final area, I just wanted to fight the boss as quickly as possible, not because of impatience, but because the story genuinely made me want to deck the antagonist in the schnoz. Also, I just want to point this out real quick. The game wasn't particularly difficult before I abused the XP system. That's just my weak will, where I'm like, ooh, an exploit. I just gotta exploit it. The game's not even particularly difficult. In fact, it's actually, the combat when you're toe-to-toe with an enemy is actually really fun. But, I saw something to exploit, and I'm like, I wonder how far this can take me. Spoiler alert, to the end. Going back to the combat system, like I said, it is fun, but it's nothing you haven't experienced before if you've played any JRPG, really. It just has a cyberpunk coat of paint on it and Pokemon's weakness system in the software abilities, which isn't even exclusively Pokemon, but you know what I mean, weaknesses. I should also warn that it can get pretty repetitive after you've seen all that the combat has to offer after the first couple hours. You still learn new abilities, but the formula doesn't change. Your tolerance on that may vary. So if you're anything like me, I know it can be hard to resist power leveling just because you can, but I would not recommend doing so, at least not to the extent that I did. From how strong I was at the end of the game, the only enemy that was actually a genuine challenge was the final boss, but everything leading up to that was not. So if you're going to grind at all, balance that out. Don't give in to the temptation that I did. Be the better me that I am not. One more thing regarding gameplay, and this is pretty interesting. Continuing from death costs you 25% of your XP points. That's redundant. Of your XP. So if you decide to continue after you die, you lose XP. It's not as costly as it sounds, since a random encounter or two will bounce you right back, but I just thought that was worth mentioning. All in all, Jack Move is a game with beautiful pixel art and a distinct style in that pixel art, a decent cast of characters, a story that is solid if not a little too fast sometimes, and is a relatively short game for the genre that it's in. So do I recommend Jack Move? Yes, it gets a go for it from me. But I also want to point something out real quick just because I've seen it online. The game is $20 for about 9 to 12 hours. In that 9 to 12 hours, you've also got some light side content in the world while you're at it, and a decent story. But keep in mind what I said about overleveling. There have been many posts online from people saying that they've completed the game in 6 to 8 hours, some even saying that they've completed it in a little more than 4 hours. Now, some of them may not be reading any of the dialogue in the cutscenes, and I'm willing to bet money that they didn't do any of the side content. I know I didn't do a lot of it. I did some, but not a lot. But it should be known that if you decide to overlevel or speed through the game, you could beat the game in one sitting. The reason I'm constantly stressing that is because for some of these people, they probably felt like they wasted their money. $20 on something they completed in 4 hours, but they grinded and trivialized the rest of the game. That's why I'm saying be careful. And yes, I do realize I'm being a dead horse. You get the point. Play game, don't grind too hard, get full experience of game. Grind a lot, game is shorter, feel like you wasted $20. Woe is the gamer that do be gaming. But at the end of the day, I recommend Jack Move wholeheartedly. Again, it's a go for it, and that's all I've got for you. So I hope you've enjoyed your stay. I'm TUSDarryl, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.